Welcome, fellow humans, to the Writing is on the Wall radio program being broadcast on WHKW 1220 AM. If I'm TA, your host, and if you would like to call and comment or have a conversation, the phone number here is 888-677-9673. Once again, that's 888-677-9673. Tonight's going to be a little bit different because I've gotten some feedback from people who can't tell that I'm not just another religious broadcaster. I'm non-religious. Non-religious for very good reasons, and we will get into that. But first of all, I want to give you an overview of what it is that I'm trying to communicate to you. And it spans all 6,000 years of human history that we can document. So, we have problems. Our biggest problem is our human-only point of view. You don't have a thought that any other human hasn't had. Unless, of course, you've read the Bible in detail to find out what it is that God wanted from us. God wanted us not to have a subjective point of view. Well, he knew it was a trap. But to switch to an objective point of view. And this is what Jesus was trying to communicate, and yet it didn't make it into the New Testament. The only thing that made it in was the characterization following his speech, and that was with Nicodemus. When he tried to tell him about it was difficult and it would be like being born again. And of course, Nicodemus couldn't understand it. Well, we still don't understand it. And that's one of the things that I'm going to have to explain. But the reason that the human point of view won't benefit us, why it traps us, is because God is not limited by the human point of view. And we have to deal with God. The original problem that we had back in the Garden of Eden is that we, our representatives, Adam and Eve, listened to sin. They listened to evil. Instead of listening to God, Adam was responsible to God. Eve was responsible to Adam. And yet, when she brought him the fruit that he didn't recognize, he didn't ask where it came from. He just ate it. And then when God showed up and said, "What the heck is going on here?" He said, "Well, Lord, she gave it to me and I ate it." So that was the original sin, listening to evil. The second one, of course, was trying to evade responsibility. But we're not going to get into that too much tonight, but that was where the problem started. And God felt that the only way that he could make us responsible was to show us some tough love. And so he ushered Adam and Eve out of the garden. And because of Cain, their firstborn, we humans made personal responsibility, individual, a socially policed goal. We expected every human to be responsible, but if they weren't, if they did something irresponsible, then it was up to the community to police that irresponsibility. That's another problem. We have continued to do that problem today. And the last problem that Adam had before he died and passed on was that he never repented. And because he didn't, we didn't. We have continued on the path, subjectively, from that time without having repented, which means to go another way, to ask for forgiveness and to go another way. Now, when Adam fathered children, he went to them and said that they had to choose what it was that they were going to do. Cain became a farmer, Abel became a herdsman. He had other children. But what he told them is the single thing that we have never addressed either. And that is, who are we? What are we? And why are we on earth? Those three questions are the ones that we've never answered, and they predate the Bible. God still loved us, even though we ignored them, and He created the events which are recorded in the Bible. Now, the first 2,500 years, we did not know that there would be a Bible. People of that time lived their lives, they prospered. Shortly after, they became extraordinarily sinful and lost the idea that they should have a way back to God at all. And so that's when God caused the flood. And I say caused the flood. So, and He said that He would never again destroy the earth for mankind's benefit. But we still never repented. And even though we ignored God, He still loved us. He still created the events which would eventually be recorded in the Bible. And we have never taken the information or the warnings seriously enough. All the things that happened to men, that they remembered, that they passed on, and Genesis is a prequel. I don't know if you realize that or not. Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy are all written down at God's insistence by Moses and the scribes after they have reached Mount Horeb. But Genesis came before. Genesis is the prequel. Genesis set everything up, and we were out of it. We did not understand what was being done for us. God actually created the Jews. Jacob was the first. In Egypt, after they had become guest workers because of the famine and had stayed in Egypt, found work, prospered for about 220 years. And then, as the Bible says, there arose a king who did not know them and didn't know what Joseph had done for Egypt or the Egyptian people and did not appreciate it. And so he enslaved them. The guest workers became permanent workers and slaves because he felt that they were just multiplying too much. They had it too easy as far as he was concerned. So God created the Jews from all the guest workers, all the captured peoples that were housed in Egypt and being used to erect the monuments to their gods and their tombs, which we still see today. And they wanted him to know. They wanted the king of Egypt to know that their God was supreme. And Moses did that. Now, Moses made a mistake along the way, which is why he could never enter, while he was alive, the promised land. He listened to someone other than God. He responded to entreaties by the people he led. He lost faith, and at Meribah, he lost God's full attention, let's say. And he was punished for it. Moses had to be an example. He was an example to the Jewish people who would be created. Time through the desert, the people who would not stick took off. They died off. As a matter of fact, none of them were still with the group, the people who had built a calf at the bottom of the mountain. Were never still there when they reached the edge of the promised land. Now, the Bible is fantastic history, but it's also an incredible structure. And through the history, we found out that just because person A said something to something B, person B, and it was recorded in the Bible, it was not correct necessarily. It was their interpretation. We'll find out all through the Bible, including the New Testament, that this is true. God gave us their true impressions for us to work off of. And he also gave us the knowledge that they were not always correct. Well, Deuteronomy, which says it's the second book, but it actually shows up as the fifth because of the Exodus, which is the leaving, Numbers and Leviticus and Numbers, which are, how do I put this? They're the pages before the contract that the Levites and everybody else wanted included in the contract, because Deuteronomy is the contract between humanity and God. You need to have someone on the other side to sign the contract, and you need to have a lawyer, shall we say? And Moses is the lawyer for the human people, who's the example of whom the people who will stand in all humanity's stead are the Jews. So Deuteronomy is a contract between humanity and God, and the executive summary is in Deuteronomy 30. The Ten Commandments, which are given both in Exodus and Deuteronomy, are the pillars for a stable society. Yes, they're also for individual behavior and great ideas, but more than that, taken together, they are the pillars of a stable society. Now, Jews continued to disobey and fail for the next 700, 800 years? Longer, actually. But there's a place at which God agrees with Moses that occasionally they'll need to get some updates from another human after Moses is gone. And this is a special group of individuals called prophets. Now, the people asked for this at Mount Horeb, and God accepted their request, and he agreed to it. And the prophets started to come probably about 700 years later, and they were ignored. Isaiah, for example, warns about failure, prophesies Jesus as the last chance for Jews. And then Jeremiah, not that many years later, 30, delivered news of failure to uphold the contract and the rescinding of the terms of the contract. He didn't say, Isaiah said, guys, you're screwing up. You don't have much time. You'd better get straight. They ignored him. Jeremiah came along and said, I'm sorry, your opportunities have closed. You have failed. Because you have failed to uphold the contract, it is closed. It is no longer open to you. Period. We're done. Now, that was kind of tough information for them to accept. They didn't accept it. They were in denial. All the things that happened to them after that, they kept looking to their religion instead of to God. And the religious masters were only people. They may say, well, we're still sacrificing to God. We have always had the franchise, and we are using it. And trust us, they were the people in authority. They were the political supernumeraries, the people that had to be obeyed. No matter who, whether Roman or Babylonian or whoever oversaw the land, if you got crosswise with the religious authorities, you were toast, as Jesus found out, as we all found out from what they did to Jesus. Even after being told that he is being sent from God to give them a last chance, they denied it. So John announces Jesus. Jesus tries to get us to obediently work on the teachings, which is the Old Testament. He tells us what's in it. He tries to tell us why. And the people of that time just couldn't get it. It just did not make sense to them. So a lot of it is not recorded. All we get are the characterizations that I mentioned earlier. Now, some of it was understandable to them, and even if they didn't quite know why it should be done, at least they recorded it, and we have that much. But we also have instances of where the best information that we could now use was not recorded. So we have to go back to the Old Testament the way that they were told to do, and we have to do the research, and we have to do the updates. So Jesus lays the path to salvation out for us, but we don't get it. He said, follow my words. Do as I do. And that was too much trouble. We didn't understand exactly what he meant. I don't know. I was not alive at the time, and ever I look back, of course now I'm looking back through a lens that's 2,000 years older, and I not only know that he was serious, but he was the Son of God, which they could not admit to themselves. So Jesus is killed by the religious authorities, and that ends any opportunity that they had to be special, to have an inside track. Paul comes along. He's, of course, Saul to begin with, and he persecutes the Jews who turn into Christians because he's super Jew. And then he has that little come to Jesus moment where he's convinced that he was not doing God's work, which all Jews told each other, yeah, we're God's favored ones. We're doing his work. And of course, they weren't. So Paul attempts to explain the state of mind we should possess in order to accept and understand what Jesus said and why he said it. Now, at this point, I would love to be able to read extensively from 2 Corinthians 3 and from Deuteronomy 18. Unfortunately, the internet is up, not up this evening here at the radio station, so I can't do that. But you can. You can look it up, and you can see what Paul said in 2 Corinthians 3. As he explained about the veils that we have over our eyes. Now, originally he said that this was true of the Jews, and that with Jesus we would rip away the veils. But unfortunately, time has told us that we just added more veils. Those veils are our human point of view. There's a reason for them, and that reason's not good. Perhaps we'll get to that after the break, which is not going to happen now, but I'm just letting you know that we have more to go. Now, Paul was a citizen of Rome, and for the next 200 and some odd years, almost 3, Rome persecutes Christians anywhere they can find them. They go into the arena, they're killed wherever they stand, they are crucified, and still they will not give up this belief that there is a way to salvation for humankind, and it is not through being Jewish. So finally, Rome's head gives up. In the early 300s, his mother becomes a Christian. And he says that we need to make Christianity the state religion. Now, the ministers of God who have been persecuted, a lot of them have broken hands and broken bones that didn't set well, and they're on the run constantly from politically correct people who feel that it's open season and nobody's going to give them a hard time if they persecute these people. So they see the value to what they do in creating a single state religion based on what Christ said. And almost all surrender Christ's authority from God to Roman authority for that support. Now, this is where I totally break away from being religious. Religion had a part to play in that it oversaw our continued existence, gave people hope, something to live and strive for. When their lives were not worth a lot, they could tell them of the rewards that they would get in heaven by doing religious things. And it was enough to keep people going. So for that we have to note their commitment. But there's a lot of problems too. And we will go over those, probably not tonight, but we will go over them. But over the next 1,000 years, Rome dies. The religion it created, however, rules human thought and deed. Until the printing press is developed and the Bible is finally printed in Vulgate. When people can read God's words for themselves, and they're no longer at the mercy of the interpretation of whatever priest is before them, when they get the straight stuff, then things begin to happen. Martin Luther challenges Roman religion for the soul of humanity. Very, very important. We will come back to this because this is when evil got scared and evil went all in, which is why we're having the problems that we have today. Protestantism erupts. Roman religion persecutes, and Christians escape to America. Non-religious, Masonic Bible scholars realize that America is the promised land for the children of God. And they create a free republic rather than democracy and establish the Bill of Rights. When we come back from our break, we will start here and go through the last 250 years. Thank you very much.
Swamp, fake news, racist hats? Are you afraid to believe anymore? Well, let me tell you of one brave soul who, like David, slew Goliath. The true story of one man's fight against greed, corruption, and insatiable ambition in small-town Ohio, Checkmate reveals why passion and integrity are rare in the corridors of swing state politics. If you want to hear the truth, how the swamp operates in Ohio with all the political corruption in real time, get Steve Krause's tell-all true life story, Checkmate, One Man's Fight Against Political Corruption, available on Amazon. As a newly elected state representative, Steve takes you behind the scenes, behind the closed doors, and rips back the curtain to expose all the lies, the deceit, and power-hungry gamesmanship. Checkmate reads like a TV drama, but it's not.
Once you start it, you won't be able to put it down.
Checkmate, One Man's Fight Against Political Corruption by Steve Krause, available on Amazon today. Be afraid. Be very afraid. There are those in Washington who want the IRS to take more of your hard-earned money. Are you tired of being the perpetual cash cow for every scheme, unreasonable program, and for all the fraud, waste, and abuse in our system? Well, good news. I can help. George Satari has almost 40 years of experience helping people like you keep more of what you make. It makes no sense that the more you make, the more they take. Let George help you keep your money away from the government bureaucratic waste and in your pocket. Call 216-651-1120 right now and schedule your free consultation today. Instead of a victim, you'll be the victor. With many success stories, George helps with tax planning, estate planning, financial and business analysis, and more. The new tax law has many ways to save money with retirement planning, accelerated depreciation, up to 20% exception of net earnings, and so much more. Call 216-651-1120. That's 216-651-1120. You earn it, we'll help you keep it. That's George Satari, CPA, 216-651-1120.
Welcome back. We started on the New World, us, America, and what the Bible being printed in Vulgate meant to us. The United States of America, what would become the United States of America, is the promised land. Most people don't know it, but in Europe, the rule of thumb is 1 man, 1 acre, 1 bushel. That's what you're able to produce for an entire season. In the United States, it's 1 man, 1 acre, 6 bushels. Talk about the land of plenty. That's why we still feed most of the world with only, less now than 3% of our population still being on farms. Oh, we don't feed every bite. But when they lack, they know where they can come to get food. We're the granary of the world. And the reason we are is because this is the promised land. This is the land promised in John to the children of God by choice. Those who accepted Jesus, those who followed his words, used his example, followed the narrow path to the gate, and then went through the gate and made the commitment to further his efforts here on earth. And that's what we are charged with doing. I'm going to finish this up so that we'll have the entire extent from Garden of Eden till today. But these last 250 years that we've been in America, a little more for some of us, for some of our families anyway, have been the most important because our founders knew that they were setting us up to be attacked by evil. And it was up to us to maintain the republic. Now, what's the difference between a republic and a democracy? I'm sure that the television people have told you for years that you live in a democracy. You do not. You live in a republic. And the republic was created so that the person who is not in authority still had a voice. So the states that are small and without huge cities have just as much authority as the states that are huge with major cities. They don't like that. They want it to be a democracy. They want the largest number of people to rule. And you know what? They'll be happy to vote for them, just in case they don't make it to the polls that day. So this is something we've got to fight. But till we get to that point, I'm going to start back at the break. Free America was built to God's specifications and is infected and overtaken by evil from Europe. Now, this is something that our history has said. Rulers from all over the world, important people said, we don't understand why the United States of America keeps going along without suffering any of the ill effects that the rest of the world suffers under. Fact of the matter is, evil was not ensconced here yet. Oh, little evil with an E, but not the major push. It didn't have a foothold. It couldn't demand. It couldn't use power and authority stolen from the people to get its way. It can today. And I think that I'm sure that we're going to have to countermand that. We're going to have to take our country back from the people who believe that evil is wonderful, if we are ever going to win through and be able to find God. And that is our job. Evil came after the least connected and the most vulnerable here in the United States, including our children. Evil bought their acquiescence with goods and the promise of the access to power. Evil seduced us into giving power to those we liked, rather than to those who would wield it responsibly. Our current society has been taken over by evil. The death of freedom for mankind to seek a successful outcome is imminent. And that's what you must decide. Do you love God and want to help His project, which is humanity, succeed and continue on to discover who we are, what we are, and why we are here on earth? Or do you prefer to give in and accept irresponsibility and death? If you decide that you want to continue onward to discover God and the answers to those three questions, we need to buckle down and get to work replacing the current political and community office holders who are infected by evil with those who support our repenting, which not only means asking for forgiveness, but going another way and restructuring our society to lead us to success. Well, God knew that we would eventually wind up here. When He told Adam in the Garden of Eden the way it's translated to us is that you will surely die. And the snake said, "Oh, you won't surely die." Well, of course, everything born of woman dies. So that's not the death that they were thinking about, or that God was mentioning. He's talking the death of the human spirit. And instead of surely, put the word inevitably in. Now, it's taken us about 6,000 years to go down that trail, but we are at the point of inevitability. We've been told, we understand, we know that we are on that precipice and that we must respond and we must take it back. And that's something that I want us to be a part of. And I'm willing to try and get you to understand how the structure in the Bible is created so that you can understand that God had this in mind for you from the beginning. Now, as to the original feedback that I am a religion, I'm not. I am non-religious. The reason I'm non-religious is not just because of all the mistakes that they've made, although there have been plenty. It's the fact that if you permit a religion to speak on your behalf to God, you are removed from God. You should not obey a religion. People who push religious authority over you and between you and God are doing the devil's work, whether they know it or not. Anything that moves you away from God, that puts up any kind of veil, whether it's your own preconceived myopia or denial or, geez, I'll deal with that on Sunday, or whatever the heck it is. Whatever separates you from looking up and seeing God is a bad thing, and that's all there is to it. You have a lot to do in order to fulfill God's final direction to humanity. Once we abjure evil, that is, push it away, never listen to it, don't acknowledge it, just do what the Bible tells us. Once we do that, once we get our house in order, which means moving all those people that listen to evil and think it's a wonderful thing, once we get them out of authority, then we can move forward to God's final direction to humanity, which was, seek my face. Anyone who wholeheartedly looks for me, looks to find me, I will let find me. Now, we don't know if this is just spiritually or just physically or a combination, but we have got to try on all levels. So that's what I would term as a Bible study, is all about. We are not going to tell you a single thing for you to peruse and think about and come to an acceptance of, as though the Bible were a self-help book and you can either accept or reject what is in it. You cannot. The only way to salvation is for you to follow Christ's example and do what the Bible tells you to do. From Christ's mouth, you need to set aside your completely human point of view, which is subjective, and rebuild your life with an open point of view, which is objective. You should not limit God. The reason, don't say, well, I can't do this, God wouldn't approve. You don't know that. And if some religious person has told you that, then you're listening to religion. if you have an open heart and mind and prayerfully ask God for direction, you will get it. I know I have. So this is not a religious exhortation of any sort. This is for you to restructure your life in such a way that when you look to read the Bible, you will understand what they are trying to tell you. All those humans from all those years that were wrapped up in all those events, and they were recorded in the Bible for our benefit. I'm to the point now where I think that the Exodus, while it saved the Jewish people, he told them in Deuteronomy, you can accept and go on and succeed, or you can reject and go on and die. You will be an example before all mankind, for good or for ill. The choice is yours. We know the choice they made. And yet I'm happy for the Jews. One of the reasons they were created was so that they would last and hold together through time. And what other group has lasted intact for 3,400 years? There isn't one. So that they would bring the Bible to us and have the language necessary to assist us in interpreting the Bible, even if they couldn't see it. So I'm not upset with the Jews at all. I kind of feel sorry for them that they never got the message. Dennis Prager is Jewish, and he's a wonderful man, and he's an intelligent individual. But unfortunately, he enjoys his religion so much that he questions that if God told him to leave his religion behind, he questions whether he would be able to do it. Dennis thinks that, or he says at least, that Abraham was the first Jew. Abraham was not the first Jew. Jacob was. Abraham was grandfather to all the different peoples, as God told him he would be. But he was not the first Jew. And yet he had the stones to take his only son by his wife Sarah up to the mountain, put him on the pillar, the altar, and to take out a knife, at which point God stopped him. He said, I wanted to see the level of your commitment, and I know now that you are worthy of all that I will give you. Well, that's where we need to be. We need to be committed to walking the path that God has laid out for us. It's in the Bible. The structure is at least as important as the words. The idea that this is a written in the hands of man, but at the direction of God, and that all the mistakes that men made are still there to inform us, not to mislead us, and that we have to figure it out. Also in the Bible, God has told us that the pillars of society that he gave us, the Ten Commandments, should not be built on shifting sands of personal belief, but on the rock-solid knowledge that he has, that man is capable of getting through this rough patch that's lasted about 6,000 years so far, and getting to the other end, because that's what those three questions are for. Who are we? What are we? And why were we housed on earth? Are the question that we will ask when we have successfully cleaned up our act, gotten our civilization back to health, and are moving forward to explore the stars. And that is where we have to go. We cannot limit ourselves to what we think is best. We have to seek God, and in order to do that, we have to set aside our human point of view, our subjective decision-making, and begin to create our lives objectively. Now, I've only got a few minutes left, but I wanted to let you know that I'll be building a podcast from the materials of this broadcast. And I'm going to have, at my beck and call at that point, I'm going to have the internet, so I'll be able to give you references, word by word and line by line. And this may be replayed at some point in the future because this gives you the scope of what we have to do. We have to take Moses' suggestion that we go all the way back to the beginning of man on earth and go all the way through every ounce of history we have and figure it all out while looking for God. And he was sure, because God was sure, that we would be successful if we did that. So that's what we have to do, and that's what this show is all about. And we are not religious. We're also non-spiritual, because God knew that that was a trap, that if we got involved in that we would waste our time and attention. So he asked us not to do that. And again, you can find reference to this in Deuteronomy 18. And you can find reference to the veils and everything else in 2 Corinthians 3. And you can study those two together to get an idea. Paul thought that only the Jews had veils in front of their eyes, and that when you listened to the words of Christ, you would tear those veils away. Unfortunately, what was written for us, we did not get all the information passed down to us. We got hints. We got referrals. But Paul knew more than we knew because it was still exciting and new and passed on mouth to mouth. But when it got to the 300s and the Roman religion that was created from Christianity, we lost a lot of that. We didn't get it in the Bible versions that we have of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. We only have a reference to it as an aside in John. John tells us that the creation of all that we are in now, not just the earth, but everything, that God was there, and that God is logic. The Word was God, and the Word was with God, which our religious people tell us, oh, that must have meant Jesus. The idea that you can say these things and pass them on as though it was gospel is something that I have a hard time with, and they will have a hard time with. Because God very famously said in the Old Testament, anybody who adds or subtracts from what I say will answer to me. And he didn't say, well, only if you do it on purpose. No. You are responsible for your words, as I am here tonight. So anything and everything that I say, I am responsible for. And I don't care what other human being tells me, oh, yeah, you're doing a great job, TA. I'm still responsible no matter what other people think. And I want you to be responsible for your words and for your actions and for your commitment. God is waiting for us to repent, which means to go another way, and to get on track. So I've been told that I have 3 more minutes, and I've been kind of filling in here because I wasn't really sure how much time I had. But the important part is, and I can cut this out later on if I dribble over myself, the important part is that you need to be committed to success. You have to understand that God wrote the Bible not only for you, the individual, but for all humanity. So if you're a Baptist and you don't like people that aren't Baptist, or you think that they're foolish or misled or something like that, please understand, we have all been misled in our expectations. Our human point of view allows us to be misled. It promotes us being misled. That's why God wanted us to have an objective point of view. We today call that thinking outside the box. The box being human expectations. I've heard people tell me that they don't like God because they think of him as the guy in the sky that pulls wings off of bugs just to see what they'll do. I've never heard a more ridiculous thing in my life. I told them, where did you get that idea? And they'll say, oh, everybody thinks so. I said, well, I'm standing here. I'm part of everybody, and I really don't think so. That's the most ridiculous thing, that you think that you understand God and are on the same level with him, and that you can criticize what he has done. Unfortunately, the human point of view is such that we don't even feel bad about doing that. We think that we are justified. And as Christ told us, only God is good and justified. All right, well, I see that my time is about up. I'm going to wrap up for this evening. I really appreciate your listening, and I hope to make this even stronger and more responsive in the future. Thanks again to listening to the Writing is on the Wall radio program.